Inspire Talks. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharine. So we are discussing what Swamiji had discussed on July 9th, 1895. It was a Tuesday. And previous talk was on intuition and how intuition is related to reasoning. Now, normally people think that intuition has nothing to do with reason. It's not that. Swamiji had beautifully said, ripeness of reason is intuition. These sentences that we have been explaining, you need to keep in mind a very important thing that we are in awe of these sentences, not because these came from Swami Vivekananda, but because he had that capability to go into the idea world and get the ideas from there for us. When you try to find a reason, when you find the logic behind it, you will find that they are so logical. These statements are extremely unusual in the sense that under normal conditions, we wouldn't have succeeded in reaching to that. But these words of Swamiji, they need not be accepted blindly. If you think deeply, you will get the rationale behind each one of his utterings. So now, we move on to the next paragraph. Work purifies the heart, so leads to Vidya. Now, here we need to have a very simple introduction to this topic. How work purifies the heart, rather how work purifies the mind. I remember when I was a young monk, I was a brahmachari in white clothes, and that was the time when I used to be as excited and as eager to know about spiritual matters as most of you might be. Now with this internet and the social media there, people keep on asking us questions about meditation, about spiritual growth and all. In those days, we had to go in person. I remember we had some real great monks staying at different places in India. And I used to be so curious about them, so excited about them. I used to visit those areas. And that's how I went to Lucknow and Haridwar and Vrindavan and many other places. Just to be near those great monks, maybe for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And somehow I was lucky enough to get a little more of them. So my one favorite question was, am I progressing in spiritual life? And what needs to be done? Actually, if you look at the questions by many of these people on different platforms, you'll find that these questions can be categorized just into two. How to be spiritual, and number two, how can I progress? And one answer they used to give, I remember, was work. Do work. And that used to be so disheartening for me. I was always a very active person, particularly in my younger days. I was a very, very, very active person. I joined at Ramakrishna Mission Vidyapit Devghar, and I was more than busy. And then I was at Advaita Ashram there also. So it was not to my liking. As I grew in maturity and as I grew in this life, slowly I realized that when Gita says, Yagyarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana, when you perform work with the idea that this is a yagya, it takes you towards liberation. It doesn't liberate you because it cannot. Work can never liberate you. And every other work that you do, which is not done with the idea of yagya, it will tie you down, it will bind you down. Now, when young people come to me, or any other person, I always tell the same thing. See, this particular statement is uttered variously, that do every act as an act of worship, do every work as an act of worship, or be detached. Ultimately, all these things mean the same thing. That when your selfishness goes away and you work, your mind gets purified, your heart gets purified. But why? Swamiji will not be explaining that why. What he will be telling is that how work has been looked upon by different masters. It's a very interesting topic. Those of you who are truly and genuinely interested in spiritual matters will find this thing very interesting, because normally when we think of spirituality, talk of spirituality, there is glamour associated with it. You think of Advait, you think of Vedanta, you think of Om Sadhana, you think of meditation, you think of Samadhi. But no, beginning is actually made at a much lower level. It starts with work. Why? The purpose of life, as far as Vedanta is concerned, as far as Hindu religion is concerned, is knowledge. By knowledge, we mean the absolute knowledge. Knowledge of the ultimate oneness, Advaita, where there is no two, where there is no one, where there is no zero. What is, comma, is. Well, how do we gain knowledge? A very simple question. Those of you who have been listening to our talks would know this. How do we gain knowledge? It's a very simple question. Innocuous. But there's a depth. This question is extremely of great importance, because if you can understand this thing, lot of problems will clear up in your life. There are two approaches as to how we gain knowledge. The first one is the common understanding that we have. We gain knowledge through our mind. As you apply your mind to some area of activity, some area of knowledge, you gain knowledge. So the scientists have an extremely focused mind, and they keep working in a particular area and they gain that knowledge. That's the most common understanding, and we all know. But Vedanta will say that no, it's not that. Atman is pure consciousness. It has all knowledge. And somehow it identifies with the mind. So mind appears lighted up. Mind appears as being conscious. As the mind becomes more and more pure, the knowledge that is there in Atman gets reflected more and more. Just something like when you put a flower near a crystal, if the crystal is absolutely clear, thoroughly dusted, you can see the color of the flower absolutely clearly with no hindrance. Mind is something like that. Mind is like that crystal. But it is colored. It's rather dusty. A lot of dust has accumulated on it. So you need to clean it up. Now, whether you take this worldly approach, where mind is the medium for all knowledge, or you take the Vedantic approach, where Atman is the ultimate of all knowledge, you will realize that whatever knowledge ultimately comes through mind. So the important thing, whether you are a scientist, a worldly person, or a Vedantin, a spiritual person, ultimately mind is the thing, and mind needs to be clean and dusted thoroughly and forever. There must not be any kind of dirt, any kind of dust, any kind of irritation in the mind. Now, When you look at the very constitution of the mind as per yoga or Vedanta, you'll see that mind is composed of three qualities: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Something that we have discussed many times. And those of you who are listening it for the first time may listen to our Raj Yoga talks. There we have discussed it in detail. Tamas is characterized by laziness, sloth. In emotions, it has that kind of thing. You become slightly violent type. If you come across somebody who is violent, jealous, greedy, you have to understand that this person is tamasic. Rajas is where you are active. You want to be appreciated. You want that others should admit that you are the greatest. If you want to make somebody happy, you have to tell directly, or you have to hint indirectly. Now, hinting indirectly is a very difficult thing. Only a master talker can do that. Normally, we are very crude, extremely crude in praising someone. See, unless you praise people, they will not be happy towards you. Now, when you talk about being truthful and all, that is absolutely unimportant. The life has to run smooth. You must not tell a lie. See, no one is asking you to tell a lie, but every person has qualities. You focus on the qualities of a person and then talk about that. Because everyone knows about his or her quality. And you go on talking about that quality, he feels good about it because society is such that people keep on talking all the negative things about you. And here you are talking something good about that person because he or she truly has that good thing. Now, if you talk the good points of a person in a very subtle manner, in an indirect manner, that person will feel much more happy. That's the subtle way. There is the gross way and there is the subtle way. Why? Because there is rajas in each one of us. And the rajas demands that we be appreciated. If you go and tell a lady that she is very beautiful, it's a very gross way of praising that lady. But you go and tell that lady, oh, your son is so intelligent. This is indirect way of telling because you are praising the product. And she feels so happy. So will you say, what if the baby is not intelligent? Every baby is curious, inquisitive, and intelligent. You just need to tell it in the right way. And that way, the rajas in that person gets scintillated. And that's a bondage. But we are all bound. And that is why we suffer. We are always hankering for praise. And when we are tamasic people, which most of us are, we become even venomous. We want to harm others. We want to hurt others. Simply because we feel that we did not get what is due to us. But these are the dirt of the mind. And because these are dirt of the mind, it doesn't let you gain proper knowledge. Because tamas and rajas, these two are active. Now, when mind becomes full of sattva, see, there is nothing called absolute sattva. There will always be some rajas and there will always be some tamas. Now, when the mind is full of sattva, pure, where tamas and rajas have gone down substantially, your power to acquire knowledge will become massive. So the scientists who make massive contributions, that is, they come up with brilliant ideas, know that they are extremely sattvic persons. I have not studied the biographies of many scientists, but the little that I have studied, I find them very fascinating, these scientists. They're such a special breed. What a wonderful lot. Next to sages, they have the best minds. By best minds, I don't mean intelligent, I mean sattvic, pure mind. By pure, we mean unselfish, where tamas and rajas are just in bare minimum percentage. And if you can transcend sattva, which can happen only during samadhi, you gain the knowledge of God. When you establish in sattva, you gain the knowledge of the world. When there is predominance of or preponderance of tamas and rajas, you do get knowledge of the world, but in a limited, in extremely limited amount. If you want to be successful, try to get rid of tamas and rajas. How do you get rid of tamas and rajas? The $1,000,000 question. You want that the kids of your family should succeed. You want that you succeed. When I was a young monk, this one thing that I also want to succeed in monastic life. So whenever I came across a monk, and there were plenty of them, who were considered and who appeared extremely advanced in spiritual life or scholarly, I always had a natural tendency to attach myself with them. I wanted to learn from them and also wanted to gauge the depth of their knowledge so that I also strive for that. Somehow, for whatever reason, I had a natural tendency uh, to kind of be near the scholarly and the saintly. Other than these two, no one fascinates me. Particularly after my becoming a monk, which was pretty early. I was hardly 20. Before that, whatever was happening was not important. But only two things, saintly and scholarly. Nothing else matters. A person may have a lot of respect. That doesn't appeal to me. So there are lots of Babajis, and they are very extremely famous from different traditions. They don't fascinate me. So naturally, this question used to come, how? And invariably, the answer was work. You want your kids to succeed, make them work. You want to succeed yourself, work. Work. No other way. There is no alternate to this. And work how? Yagyarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. When you work as if it is a yagya, is a sacred act, it makes your mind sattvic. It makes your mind pure. Pure mind is a powerful mind. Pure mind is unselfish mind. Pure mind is mind that is free of tamas and rajas. Tamas and rajas, as we explained. So, actually, what happens when you start working, the seeds of tamas and rajas that are there in your mind, they sprout. And once they sprout, it becomes easy to uproot them. Otherwise, they will continue to be there. And when you start your spiritual journey, you might have heard of a very famous story from our ancient traditions of Vishwamitra. It's a very interesting story. Vishwamitra was a king of those times, small king. And then he had a tiff with sage Vasishtha. And sage Vasishtha defeated him. So Vishwamitra became extremely upset and he said, I'm a Kshatriya from warrior caste, and I got defeated by this ordinary Brahmin. I also want to be a Brahmin, and I want to have those special powers that Vasishtha has. And he went into sadhana, started doing intense sadhana. He went for intense sadhana, but the seeds of tamas and rajas, which are inherent in a Kshatriya, they continue to be with him naturally. See, in earlier times, the lawgivers believed that you can be born in a Brahmin family only if the percentage of tamas and rajas is pretty less in you. Otherwise, no. Anyway, we are not going to contest that, and we are neither going to support it, because now we don't go by all those things, because there have been lots of intercaste marriages, etc. What matters now is that your natural tendencies, let's forget Kshatriya, let's forget Brahmin. Vasishtha had been growing in a particular tradition, Brahminical tradition, where study of the Vedas and tapasya and yajna, they were extremely important. And here was Vishwamitra. For him, ruling the subjects and enjoying the life, that was the most important thing. And suddenly he says, here I give up everything. So supposing those of you who are listening here, you suddenly decide that you want to be a saint. You want to be, so where is your preparation? There are some listeners on this and other this series of talks who want to have spiritual wisdom. But what about your tamas and rajas? Those seeds will continue to be there. And once you get into that field, there will be devastating consequences. Think of you constructing a palace and leaving certain seeds of banyan and people, ashwatha there, and they sprout. What happens to your palace? Palace gets blown apart. This is what happened with Vishwamitra. So, he was doing a lot of sadhana. Now, when you are doing sadhana, you get lots of powers. And those powers are like waters to those seeds of tamas and rajas. People don't even understand these things. And these popular talks nowadays on social media, it has left people so thoroughly confused, and they will be disillusioned very soon. So every time Vishwamitra had power, he would go to destroy Vasishtha. At other times, he did strange things, like he created a new heaven. And finally, he was tempted by an apsara. Menaka came in tempted and ruined all his tapasya. But why? Why this does not happen with most of the Brahmin sages? If you read it, Ramayana and Mahabharata and other Puranas, very often you find that people who went into tapasya suddenly, just like that, they always fell. But those who continue to be like that, generally, very carefully, of course, Brahmins were there also in that. If you continued in a tradition under proper guidance, generally you did not meet with a fall. Otherwise, you had. The reason was always the same. Seeds of tamas and rajas. Sometimes you might read in newspapers that this Sadhu Baba and that Mahatma had a fall. Why? Were they not sincere? They were extremely sincere. So where was the problem? They were not trained properly. And because they were not trained properly, the seeds of tamas and rajas, they sprouted much more powerfully than they would have had this person continue to be in the world. Because of their power of tapasya, because of their spiritual practices, these things sprouted very powerfully and ruined them. They did not even know. They did not even know that this thing is sprouting and about to ruin that person. Work is the antidote to that. When you start working, these seeds sprout. but they are not as powerful as they would be when you meditate. Then somebody points out, "Arey, kya ho raha hai?" And sometimes they say, in Ramakrishna Mission, you see, we are a very small organization. Hardly 1,500 monks are there. And we have some centers now. Naturally, every center will have a head. They are known as usually secretaries. So these are small centers, basically. There are very few large centers. So sometimes there is a joke amongst monks that, see, now that he has become head of the center, his head has turned. And I always say, no, I have never seen anyone's head turning. The seeds of that particular behavior where he wanted to assert himself was always there. Because he did not have the opportunity, because he did not have the scope, it was not visible. Same with politicians. Politician who is in opposition behaves in one way. The moment he gets power, he behaves differently. Why? Because there was no scope for the sprouting of these seeds. Once they get the chance, once they get the proper environment, proper watering, they sprout. If you are careful enough, you can uproot them. Even if you don't uproot, they will not harm you much. Because you're in the world and social forces are such, or rather societal forces are such, that they will beat you into shape. Here in India, when I think of our Indian constitution, I always wonder at the grand perception that our forefathers of constitution had. They made administrative, judiciary, and legislative separate, absolutely separate. And there had to be a balance of power. So no one had the absolute power. Now, what happens with chair is a person sitting in the chair always carries a little more or a little less than the power that is permitted by the chair. That's a different thing. But you can never have the absolute power. Apparently, legislative, that is the prime minister and all, they have more power, but that power again falls back to the common people. So even if you try to fly high, you will be brought down. Not so in meditation, because meditation is done all alone. You won't even know of your angularities. You won't know where you are going wrong. Now, when a society, full society is religious, the way we Hindus were, this problem was serious. If your entire society gets into religious acts and there is no balancing act, what would be the consequence? Whole society will go wrong. And that is why scriptures repeatedly prescribe that work, work, work. And you'll find that every religion and every societal outlook and philosophical outlook lays a lot of emphasis on work. So much so that Hindu society was founded on the principle of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. If you are not going all out for moksha, liberation, then you need to work. Work for your financial well-being, for your emotional well-being, and for your well-being in the afterlife. And for that you have to work. When I was writing my book Carving a Sky, I had come up with this beautiful idea of Vidya, Sampad, Seva, Tyag. Dedicate yourself to learning. Dedicate yourself to creating wealth for the society, or serve. In either of these three cases, you need to work. So now how work was perceived by, say, persons like Shankaracharya, this is discussed. Now with this idea clear that why work has tremendous importance in religious life as also in spiritual life. Now when Vedanta came, we shall see just now that in Vedanta, you don't get liberation through work. And even good work is considered to be a hindrance to mukti. So they said that work should not be done. That created a lot of confusion, and most of the Vedantins in this country, they're totally confused, totally confused. We shall see, and I'll explain why. So work purifies the heart and so leads to vidya, wisdom. Why? Because it removes tamas and rajas. You get established in sattva. Once you get established in sattva, whether it be whether you accept Atman as the source of all knowledge, it gets reflected. Or if you think that mind is everything, the mind has become pure, so naturally it can grasp really good. Now the Buddhist said doing good to men and to animals were the only works. Now here comes Buddhism, where it says that if you do good to human beings and to animals, that means that will not be your really goal. But if you keep on doing, it will purify your mind. You might ask, those of you here, that supposing you say you are a housewife, how can work take you towards that? Well, be detached. That means put your entire attention, put your entire resources, put your whole personality into it. And stay aloof as far as the results are concerned. The Brahmin said that worship and all ceremonials were equally work and purified the mind. So here comes the fundamental difference between the Brahmins of the Vedic period when Buddha was there and the approach of Buddha. The Brahmins were followers of the Vedas, and the Vedas said that you need to do yajna so that you could get dharma, artha, kama. Buddha was not interested in the Vedas. He had outgrown the need for the Vedas. And he was master by his own divine rights. So he said that serve people. Ultimately, when you are doing yajna, you have to be unselfish. When you are serving others, you have to be unselfish. And unselfishness is purity. Unselfishness means it destroys tamas and rajas. Once it destroys tamas and rajas, your mind becomes sattvic, your mind becomes pure, and you become fit for spiritual realization. Shankara declares that all works, good and bad, are against knowledge. Now, this is a very important thing. See what happens. Actually, many people get confused here. Not you people, because you are not into the technicalities of spirituality. See what happens. Spirituality means mind has to be completely stilled. Not a calm mind. Calm mind will not work. Calm mind is sattvic mind. Stilled mind. Absolutely stilled. Now, even if you are doing good work, there will be some kind of wave. Because unless mind is involved, you cannot work. So, Shankaracharya is talking from extremely high point. And this is where the subsequent Vedantins committed the blunder. They said that you must not work. But Acharya Shankar himself repeatedly says, repeatedly, wherever he's writing his commentary, he's saying that work purifies, work purifies, work purifies. But we are so ignorant, we are so naive that we always want to hit at the highest. You cannot go and hit the highest. You need to begin from the beginning. And if you meet any of these Vedantin monks, you see, once, long ago, that was years ago, in those days, I was not into talking, etc. In fact, I don't deliver public talks. I've hardly, in total, I don't think I have delivered more than 10 talks in my whole life. Classes, yes. Because essentially, I'm a teacher, I'm not an orator. So I was invited by one of these Rotary Club people, and there I met one gentleman, and he told that he has taken Diksha initiation from some Himalayan monk, and he has told that work is a very bad thing. I was horrified because I've not interacted with many people in the society. And so when I hear such things, I feel surprised. What nonsense. I explained things to him and he was kind of surprised. Now he was in a dilemma that I was talking logically and he had to listen to his uh, guru from whom he had taken Diksha. Anyway, whatever I had to tell, I told. This is a genuine problem with every Vedantin. And if you talk about these things, they will say that you go back to the world, complete all your work. Once you are purified, then come to me. This is utter nonsense. This is where Swami Vivekananda changed the entire landscape of monastic culture. When he set up the Ramakrishna mission, he said, no, you can work even as a monk because you need to work till you have reached that height of realization. You need to work. And that is why you will see that Ramakrishna mission is indulging in to work. And earlier, there was criticism. Even nowadays, I come across some posts here and there on social media where people are talking about this and that. They say that, are you unselfish? Probably not. No, I'm not. But the very structure of the Ramakrishna mission makes you unselfish. How? You work at a center with all your seriousness and you feel that you are doing such a great work and wonder, and suddenly you are transferred. Whatever you have created. See, I remember I was a small boy, I was hardly 10 years old. I was studying in those days as a Ramakrishna Mission Devghar. And there was a very famous secretary monk, Swami Shuddha Sattvananda Ji Maharaj. Those of you who have been to Devghar might know. He had a wonderful personality, very extremely good looking, and a very, very, very successful monk, successful in the field of activities. And within a few years, he changed the very structure of that institution. And there was a temple opening ceremony. It was 1970. It was a huge festival for 7 days. And we were just kids not knowing what to do, where to go. And in those days, our president of the Ramakrishna Mission, Srimad Swami Vireshwaranji Maharaj, he had visited there. And Swami Shuddha Sattvananda Ji, he was at the peak of his glory, the little glory that a monk can have. And during the speech by revered President Maharaj, he praised Swami Shuddha Sattvananda Ji Maharaj, such a wonderful person. He has done such wonderful things, and said, and he's so capable that we are taking him away from here and putting him in some other institution. See, whenever I think of this incident, I still laugh. I'm not very sure if he had informed Swami Shuddha Sattvananda Ji before or not. I have no idea. Probably not. But others did not know. And it was such a shock. A person who is at the height of his glory, such great things he has done, and so much to do even now, while being praised by the head of the organization. It is told that, what a wonderful person, what a great things. And we are taking him. And within a month, literally within a month, he was transferred from there. Within a month, I remember. It was I think, 23rd March. Program was around sometime in March. And end of April, he had gone. New monk came. So unthinkable, imagine. So it automatically teaches you unselfishness. Not that Swami Shuddha Sattvanji was selfish or self-centered. No, not that. What I am telling that I myself have, wherever I was, I worked passionately and I put my whole and soul, and suddenly headquarters say, now come away. Not for a special reason. I might be needed somewhere, or people may not be happy with me somewhere, and I'm out. Finished. Whatever I did remains there, and I'm out. It automatically teaches you. And I have a large number of friends in IS and IPS. No, of course, most of them are now retiring. But some say 30 years ago, when I used to see some district magistrate were doing such a wonderful job, and suddenly you find in newspapers he has been transferred. And many times they also got that news from newspapers only, in the sense that by the time the news came to them, it was public, news was public. And even in those days, I'm talking about early 90s, I should think about these IS officers and IPS officers. Let's see, if only they want to learn detachment in life, unselfishness, they can learn so easily. You do so much for a district or a division, you do so much for your department, and you're suddenly transferred. It might be because of many reasons. It might be because some powers that be are not happy with you, or it might be the whim of some politician or some powerful person, but you're out. The entire town may come to give you a grand see off, but you're out. If your children are studying in one of those schools, local schools, now they have to be taken away. And your wife, and if you are a lady, your husband, now they have to pack up and move. Now, if this does not create a kind of disenchantment, and if it doesn't create some kind of unselfishness in you, you will never learn. Bottom line remains, slightest of movement in your mind, stillness gets disturbed. If stillness gets disturbed, you are no more established in Brahman. So actions tending to ignorance are sins, not directly but as causes, because they tend to increase tamas and rajas. This is again a very important point in Hindu religion, that according to Semitic religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, there is a will of God, and that will of God has been expressed through the book with a capital T and capital B. So when you transgress that, you are committing a sin. And because you are committing a sin, your seat is booked in the hell. Not in Hinduism. If you do some evil act, if it's an evil act, it is goaded entirely by tamas and rajas, your selfishness. Now, if it has been goaded, it only means that tamas and rajas have become more powerful. And if they have become more powerful, they'll make you do wrong things more, and more, till you get hit badly either by the social system or by divine justice. So, actions tending to ignorance, that means if you are moving away from God, if you are moving from spirituality, are sin. Not sin in the sense that is commonly understood, sin against God, but it is sin in the sense that your tamas and rajas, these tendencies are increasing. With sattva only comes wisdom. This is what I was explaining. If your mind is absolutely pure, you are established in wisdom, you are established in knowledge. Gita very beautifully says, Sukha shangena badnati jnana sangena chanagha. The sattva. When mind is in sattva, it stays happy. Do you stay happy all the time? Are you smiling all the time? From within, not fake smile. That now corporate world and, see. Sometimes when I travel by flight, I look at those air hostesses and I wonder how they succeed in smiling so much. So I wonder if these smiles are plastic smile. I'm not sure. I don't know. I have no idea. If I know someone, maybe I would ask that when you smile, are these smiles coming from within? or they're just pasted on your face. If they are coming from within, it means you are happy, which means you are established in sattva. Do you get upset? Do you get angry? Do you feel hurt all the time? Most of the time. That means you are not established in sattva. If you are established in sattva, these emotions will not touch you easily. And sukh sangena badnati jnana sangena, jnana, knowledge. Can you understand a subject quickly? Can you grasp the situation very fast? Can you understand a mind very fast? If yes, your mind is established in sattva. If not, you are in tamas and rajas. You need to work. You need to do tremendous amount of work and unselfishly. Virtuous deeds take off the veil from knowledge, and knowledge alone can make us see God. Knowledge alone makes you see God. There is no other. So whether it is bhakti or karma, whatever approach you may have, ultimately it is the knowledge of God that makes you see God. So having explained how knowledge comes, that is, you need to have a pure mind, unselfish mind, a mind which is full of sattva. Now Swamiji is discussing knowledge. Knowledge can never be created. It can only be discovered. And every man who makes a great discovery is inspired. For this inspired thing, you will have to go to our previous talk where we discussed how when you're established in reasoning, and when that reasoning becomes ripe, it becomes inspiration or intuition. These are just play of words. Depending on what you mean, you can use inspiration, you can mean intuition. Instinct. There is animal instinct who go by their basic senses. But as far as masters are concerned, their instincts and inspirations and intuitions, they are all one and the same. We have discussed this in the previous talks. So every man who makes a great discovery is inspired. There is reasoning. And full ripeness of reason is intuition, Swamiji says. Unless you have studied a lot, unless you have reasoned a lot, unless you have discussed a lot, your intuitive powers will not be ripe. Sometimes people come and want to know how we know all these things. Well, we have listened so much to our masters. In present generation, their entire knowledge comes from social media. They don't even read books. How can they expect to have knowledge? Knowledge can never be created, can only be discovered, as we said, and only when it's a spiritual truth he brings, we call him a prophet, and when it's on the physical plane, we call him a scientific man. So now, this what we had discussed in the beginning. When you cross this sattva, when you reach the transcendental state means where you cross your mind. You are a prophet. But the knowledge of the divine that descends on the mind is a pure mind. It's not a colored mind. And the scientists who apply their mind to this world, their mind is also pure. But there's a fundamental difference. In one case, you transcend. That is, but when we say transcend, it means mind has become still. Because mind has become still, so Atman, call it by any name, call it Atman, call it Brahman, call it God, call whatever. It lets out the correct reflection. When stillness is not there, the reflection is blurred. And blurred reflection is the world. Reflection of Atman in the stilled mind is God. Reflection of Atman in a non-stilled mind is the world. I see this pen. Why? Because my mind is in a wave state. So this is basically a blurred vision of God. Because nothing exists other than God. This is the blurred vision of God. If my mind were to be stilled somehow, in whatever way, then I won't see this pen. I see God. Because I will not see anything other than God. Fortunately for us, apart from the sacred books that we have and some popular books that we have the words of Sri Ramakrishna who used to experience these things day in and day out. And these experiences were not solitary in nature. They were in abundance. Then you realize it. And he describes how the goat that is to be sacrificed in front of Mother Kali, he's seeing that that goat has pure consciousness, the sword has pure consciousness, the person who was about to sacrifice it, pure consciousness. And the wooden pillar where that goat was to be tied down, same consciousness. Stillness of mind makes you see Atman as God or Atman as Atman. And a disturbed mind, with even a little of stillness disturbed, makes you see that Atman as a blurred vision. Blurred vision. This is world. Scientists are the people who are having that blurred vision of God. And because they are having that blurred vision of God, we call that science. So was Einstein a sage? 100% he was a sage. That's that he was having the blurred vision of God. Any scientist who reaches that level of equanimity is a sage. Now you cannot say Thomas Alva Edison was a sage because he was experimenting lots of things. Basically, he was not qualitatively different from us. Einstein was qualitatively different from us. And then Swami says, and we attribute more importance to the former, although the source of all truth is one. One. Source of all truth, whether it be spiritual truth or be scientific truth or truth of economics or truth related to computers, truth related to art, music, anything. The source is one, Atman, God. Stillness gives you clear vision of God. Blurred vision. Blurred vision means where mind is not stilled. Is this world. Anything of this world, whether that be science or music or anything. Think of Rabindranath Tagore. Those of you who might have studied Rabindranath Tagore. Look at his poetry. See the sentences he comes up with. The expressions he comes up with. Amazing. Unthinkable. But essentially he was seeing the world. Now whether he was seeing the world or not, that's not important. The source was one, the God. Think of Van Gogh. Paintings of Van Gogh. We cannot paint like him. He was expressing God through his paintings. Source was the same God. But his was not a stilled mind. He was not really a sage, little less than that. Scientists are, particularly theoretical scientists, they are. No, practical scientists not that much because they have to work a lot. The moment you have to work a lot, your mind is not in that state of stillness. Shankara says Brahman is the essence, the reality of all knowledge, and that all manifestations as knower, knowing, and known are mere imaginings in Brahman. Now, this is a very important thing that Acharya Shankara talks, and his reasonings are very simple. That here is this pen, and there are two ideas associated with this pen. First is the pen itself, and second is the isness of that pen. The pen is. Now, I am conscious that there is the existence of this pen. Now, what Acharya Shankara does is he makes a very clear distinction between existence and pen. He says that pen is just a qualification on existence. If you destroy this pen, pen will be destroyed, but existence will continue to be there. How? So here we have this microphone. Existence will cease to be in this pen, but existence will continue to be in this microphone. And then when you destroy everything that is there in the universe, all this universe will be destroyed, but existence will continue to be there. And the ultimate existence where nothing else remains, this is God, Sat. The term for existence in Sanskrit is Sat. God is Sat, pure existence, where there is no qualifying adjunct. There is absolutely no kind of qualification there. And you know what exists. Even if you imagine something, even if you hallucinate something, even you dream of something, for you it is real. So unless a thing exists, you cannot have knowledge. Now, since in the ultimate analysis, only Brahman exists, that is pure existence exists, so it is knowledge. Because there is nothing else. And you find joy with something that you know. Unless you know, you cannot enjoy. How can you enjoy something which you don't know? And there's only one knowledge of Brahman. So Brahman is bliss. Brahman is existence, knowledge, bliss. What is bliss is knowledge. What is knowledge is existence. This is Brahman. It's a very simple logic, straightforward. You don't require any axioms there. Nothing. Nothing. There is no requirement for any mind, this, that, nothing. It's a very plain and simple logic. And, I always feel surprised when I read how dualistics have been trying to attack this, that, see, I'm not even in favor of these people. They are great. I mean, great. Ramanuja and Madhva, they're really great people, no doubt about it. But it's such a simple argument. And because they have great minds, they attack these things and they say, as Swamiji will say, Ramanuja attributes consciousness to God. Now, for Ramanuja, God is all important, not Brahman. He says Brahman is an aspect of God, and consciousness is a quality, is an attribute of God. This is the major difference between Shankaracharya and Ramanuja. For Ramanuja, consciousness and bliss, these are the qualities of God. For Shankaracharya, that is God. Who is right? Depends on your mindset. Depends on your mindset. For me, it's a very simple thing. Stillness of mind will always imply that God is consciousness. Where there is just one single wave in the mind of God, it is not completely still mind, it's a calm mind. It will see consciousness as the quality of God. Essentially, they are not different. This is what Sri Ramakrishna also says, that Vishishta Dvaita, Dvaita, and Advaita. They're just different ways of looking at things. If you're looking at it with a complete stillness of mind, you will see things in one way. And if you're seeing it with some kind of wave, you will see it differently. The real monists attribute nothing, not even existence in any meaning that we can attach to it, as I explained. Ramanuja declares that God is the essence of conscious knowledge. God is the essence of conscious knowledge. Acharya Shankar will say that no. pure consciousness is God. So undifferentiated consciousness, when differentiated, becomes the world. So all these are philosophical uh, discussions, and those who have been brought up in a particular tradition, like many of my friends have been brought up in Madhva's tradition, many in Ramanuja's tradition. I personally belong to Shankara's tradition, and Ramanuja appeals to heart, no doubt. Shankar appeals to the head. Well, our time is up. We end it here. Thank you so much.